You're listening to Bad Dog Agility, bringing you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility. And now, here are your hosts, Sarah and Esteban.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 151. Today's podcast is brought to you by Elite Science. Unlock your dog's full potential with a unique competitive edge solution, 1-TDC. 1-tetradecanol complex is a patented blend of unique fatty acid oils designed to safely and effectively keep joints and muscles at their best to maximize performance and shorten recovery time. 1-TDC is the next generation of fatty acids and is used by many current and past National Agility Champions of World team members. All of our listeners will automatically qualify for a great 1-TDC special offer by purchasing online at BDA1TDC.com. That's BDA, the number 1, TDC.com.
Today's podcast is also brought to you by Back on Track. Dog agility is a demanding sport and can be difficult on the body, both the dogs and the humans. Back on Track specializes in dog blankets, beds, and wraps that keep muscles warm and reduce the pain in joints. If you've got a nagging knee, calf, or ankle injury, Back on Track's human products can help get you back in the ring. Visit Back on Track at backontrackproducts.com.
Today we have a very special guest on the podcast. We have Judge Janet Gauntt, recently coming off of a judging assignment at the USDAA Cynosport. Welcome to the podcast, Janet.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, the reason that we wanted to have Janet on the podcast today was that Cynosport this year introduced an instant replay process to their final events. And this is something that I found extremely interesting and exciting as a development in the sport of agility.
Well, actually, it wasn't really introduced this year. This is something we've been playing with for several years, and we're sort of been approaching getting the system better and better. This was the first year that we really went very live with it so that everyone knew we were doing it.
Ah, okay. So we've been a little bit out of the loop, but I saw an article that was put out by USDAA this year where they kind of laid out the process. So let's just start with that. Like, what is the instant replay process that's being used?
Well, what we decided on this year was definitely you have the judge on the field. We've been discussing having a video judge for quite some time, and we've been discussing it with members of the judging corps. And some of them, when they first hear it, aren't very happy to hear that there's a video judge, because their first fear is, well, are they just going to override everything that I've been doing? And so we had to make sure that the system that we picked made it very clear that there is what we call the head judge. And the head judge is the person who's standing there on the field, who's really making all the decisions about what they see for those things that we have objective judging calls on, which objective being something where there's a very straight up decision. The bar either falls or it doesn't. The dog either hits a paw in the contact or he doesn't. And then there are these subjective calls. Was that really a refusal? This, that, and the other. So the first thing we do is we decide there's definitely a head judge, and they are responsible for 100% of the subjective calls. And then the video judge is really providing them some backup on the objective calls. So in that particular case, we have quite a lot of technology that is set up to get this happening. We have, at this particular event, we've had other setups at past events where we've been prototyping it. At this event, we had 9 cameras out on various pieces of equipment out on the field. Those 9 cameras all pulled into the main monitor, which is like a big 55-inch monitor sitting back in the control booth. And it was sort of a multi-display thing where on that one big monitor you had the perspectives coming in from all 9 cameras. And so you have your head judge out on the field. Your video review judge is looking at those 9 perspectives in real time and flagging things that the video judge believes that the head judge will want to come and review later. So that's the basic set.
So we're talking about more than just the down and up contacts?
Definitely. The other two pieces of equipment that we've decided to put cameras on are the break-apart tire and the long jump. And both of those, because when you have a break-apart tire, those are just magnets holding those two halves of the tire together. And as a dog has an impact along particularly usually the inner lower rim of the tire, it can cause what we might call a partial opening, where the two sections at the bottom will separate just long enough that there will be sort of like a peak of the inner edge. And it can be difficult sometimes to tell whether there's been a peak or whether an actual brief separation of the tires. And so going on objective criteria, you don't want to decide that, this tire only opened a little, so I'm not going to judge it. So we really want to go with a very objective criteria. Either the two halves completely separated or they did not. So,
wow, that's very interesting. And that makes me think that it may be video review that eventually ushers the tire right out of dog agility, as people kind of don't want to deal with that.
As in they don't want to know the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
What about, say, for example, the down contact on a dog walk? You say you've got 9 cameras. Do you have more than one camera for a given thing, like the down contact, like one on each side, or 3 cameras, 3 views for a particular obstacle?
Yeah, this is something that, again, we're still working out the system on. We always have a large punch list after an event of things that we decided worked or didn't work. And so, something that came out of punch lists from previous events was we definitely needed multiple cameras on the contacts in particular, because in general, as a judge, you go ahead and try to design the course so that the exhibitor will be on one side or the other of the dog walker A-frame. But, sometimes they don't do what you want. Or if you stick it right in the middle of the field, they'll definitely go where they want to go. And that means that you get into situations where your camera might get blocked. And so it's better to have multiple viewing angles on something like the dog walk and the A-frame, particularly the down contact. And usually you want at least one side presentation, one partial front, and definitely one from the other side.
Now, this is a really, in my opinion, fantastic development for the sport. I'm very impressed that USDAA went ahead with this. It reminds me a lot about the National Football League. So here we're talking about American football. There's been a lot of changes over the recent years, and when they first came out with video review, it seemed like such a great idea, and ultimate decision-making resided kind of with the powers that be in the video booth in New York. They weren't at the game. They would tell the ref, this is what we saw. But in recent times, there's been blowback the other way. So how you talked about having that head judge, in football, they've got, if you don't have incontrovertible, indisputable evidence, they can clearly, what do they call it?
Indisputable is the word that we fix everything around. Indisputable.
If you don't have that indisputable evidence, you got to go with the call that was made on the field, right? And so, on those borderline cases where the video, you're like, I still can't really tell absolutely. Maybe the call was wrong, but you're still going to go with the call on the field. So I really like that. I really like how you establish kind of the supremacy there of the judge on the field, kind of keeping that power intact.
So then how does that work? Like, let's finish up that process, because you mentioned that the booth judge is just flagging things for the head judge to review. So then all of that review happens at the end of the class?
No, it's actually, the review by the head judge happens at the next strategic break, if you will, which,
right.
Generally would be for something like a national event. You usually have a relatively small number of exhibitors who are showing in a particular height. So that height break is a really convenient time for the head judge to come over and review the video that's been pulled aside for them.
So then it is up to the head judge to override their own call or not.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so all that our video judge is doing is flagging those things that are questionable. So, and like if you go to the USDA website, I think we have an article up there. We've got some examples on YouTube that show you exactly what the same video feed in real time that the video judge is looking at. And so you can see that they've got a pretty clear picture of and you're only seeing like one of the angles. You'll see that's the angle that was selected for the best review of that particular obstacle for the head judge to come over and review.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to point out, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that all of the judges in all of the organizations are doing their best.
Oh.
Like no judge is every judge is trying to make the best calls they can, but this is a very fast sport,
Absolutely, yes. And it's, I do a lot of supervising of new judges, and this is something that we have to sit down and have a talk with them as the event progresses, because even an extremely experienced judge will tell you, you can't stand there and judge, 300 to 500 runs a day and not have made some calls 2 or 3 times that day in which you thought, that's what I think happened, but I got blocked, I blinked, I was slightly out of position. There's going to be this extremely small percentage of calls where you just aren't 100% sure. And at a local event, you just have to go with it, make the call, move on to the next dog immediately, the next obstacle immediately. You have to clear your head. So you cannot be second-guessing yourself. But perspective's a little bit different for a regional or a national/international event, because as a judge, one of the things you're trying to do, a standard that you put on yourself is you want to make sure that the right dog wins today. That's more important than trying to figure out if somebody qualified or this, that, and the other. Did the right dog win today? And so as you're doing the judging, you have to go the extra effort to get into position to try to make that call. And that works great for the local shows, maybe great for the regional, but for a national/international event, maybe that's not good enough. Maybe it's good to have some technology backing you up, because it really is all about making sure the right dog wins.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of mindset stuff that goes into it, too. As competitors, like I said, we need to realize the judges are doing their best. As judges, it sounds like there's a little bit of an adjustment to be made when you're in this kind of situation to, I guess, let go a little bit of the feeling of I'm always right, and give yourself permission to find those calls that were not correct and correct them, and not have it be a beating yourself up kind of process. It's just, this is sports. This is how it works.
This is sports.
Everything.
Exactly.
So did you notice any pattern in what ended up being overturned? Like, were you more likely to see a call that was missed, or more likely to see a call that was made that shouldn't have been, or was it just seemed completely random?
Yeah, it was really both. I can't say that one happened over the other. Maybe certain things like the up contact on the dog walk. It's probably more likely that the judge is missing calling and a missed up contact. But for everything else, it's pretty random.
So then how was this received by the competitors?
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing, because they've never really had this pulled out on them at a national event before. If you've been showing yourself in agility for years, there's this saying that judges hate, by the way, that goes around, well, the agility gods giveth and they taketh away, implying,
right.
Implying that there's some random factor to it all, and so if you as an exhibitor approach the sport from that viewpoint, then you might be a little unhappy that the agility gods have gotten a lot more accurate lately.
Right.
So and I think in a couple of cases, I think particularly early at that event, because that event goes over several days, and the video reviews started playing out, you kind of heard a little bit of, well, how accurate can it be? And at that point, we went ahead and posted the article, posted the criteria, tried to build a little bit of trust in the process as the event was going on, so that when we actually started hitting the finals, that people began to understand that this was pretty solid stuff.
Right. We're very familiar with video review just from the perspective of analyzing our own runs just for getting better as competitors. And, when you slow a run down, you can see where the dog is looking on a jump to know whether they read a rear correctly or not. You can tell a lot when you slow that video down.
Oh, absolutely. And that's going back to your question before of, how does the actual technological setup look? Even though the video judge is sitting there looking at 9 screens, at some point we flag, that one needs review. So that particular feed, we've got software that's doing that, gets saved over for review by the, video judge first and then the head judge. So that gets put up on a second monitor, and that we can sit and run that through excruciatingly frame by frame by frame in very high detail. And so we're getting technological toys here that are a lot better than anything I've been able to play with on a personal level.
So one thing that I was imagining is what it would be like as a competitor to on both sides, to have a run taken away that I thought was clean, or to have a run or to be bumped up or given a cue that I thought that I'd lost. And it made me think about those times where as a competitor, you come off of a run and you think that you just killed it. You're all excited and happy, and then somebody on the sidelines says, "Oh, great run! Shame about that bar."
Yes.
What? And it's like that on steroids, because it's so much further down the line. Well, so I imagine that's like how it feels like as a competitor. But
actually, it's even a little bit worse, because when you're a competitor and your friends are all standing there watching, you see the judge's hand go up or you don't. And
right.
Now we've got something that's now under dispute. And that was, I think, we were into the second day of this, and we were discussing that question exactly. The fact that, so much of this is hidden. So let's see if we can bring a little bit of awareness to it. So one of the things that we began doing while we were up in the booth was, we had our video judge who was viewing all this, and the litany would sound like this: tire is good, A-frame good, dog walk faulted. So the video review judge would actually just be judging it in real time. And we had a second person watching the judge on the field who was saying, dog walk faulted, A-frame good. And if there was any discrepancy between the two judges, we marked it down. We now have a dispute.
That is fascinating. So you had 2 judges up in the booth.
Yes. And so, we had one judge and one judge watcher.
Right.
Okay. And so the minute we had a dispute, then we could have just announced it. But of course, the video review judge has toys to play with. So the video review judge immediately pulled that over onto the large single monitor, checked it in slow-mo, and then confirmed or said, "Oh, no, that wasn't really, I've removed my dispute now." Okay. But if the dispute stood, we tried to get it announced as soon as possible out to the stands, so that everyone sitting out there in the stand and the competitor that just ran now knew as soon as possible that there was, that run was now under review.
So maybe what they need is a couple of beanie bags that are red that they can throw out whenever they think they're
Yeah, we definitely have some drama yet that we can still introduce into this situation. Yes.
That's right. For anybody who doesn't know, that's how they do it in football.
Yeah.
But you brought up another really interesting point. I think it's fantastic, which is the flip side of what you said. You said that there might not be a call, but there's a dispute on the back end, and nobody knows that.
Yes.
On the flip side, there might be a call. The judge's hands might go up, and that call could be overturned.
Correct.
And my point here is, as competitors, we should, whether there is video review or not, whether we really have faulted or not, we should do our best the entire run. But this really highlights that. If you let down, if you give up, you could be throwing away a perfectly good run with this new process.
Exactly. And in fact, the people who tend to rise to the top of the sport embrace that concept, even at the local level. If something goes wrong, they immediately remove it from that shelf and keep with the rest of the run. And that is very good advice for all levels of trials.
And I think the other interesting thing about this whole process is that I think as competitors, just like judges are doing their best, competitors are doing their best. I think competitors, in theory, do want the most accurate calls possible. And I think it's just a matter of kind of adjusting our view of the world to include in that this sort of delayed factor.
Yes. Well, I do hope everybody does embrace the concept because, over the years, I've gone to many, many different finals. Every now and then I'll get in one, but sadly most of the time I've been out in the stands with everyone else watching the finals. And you really don't like it when the right dog doesn't win that day because there was a mistake. Or even worse, we all find out about it a couple of days later when the video goes up on YouTube, and we realize that the right dog didn't win.
Sure. Now, I'm not one to foster negative competition between organizations, but I'd really like to see something like this at least go into development in some of the other organizations, and even something, and they may already, like at the World Championship.
Right, we don't know what happens behind the scenes, just like we didn't know that this process has been being tinkered with by USDA. But I really commend both the organization and the judges for being open to this idea and being receptive to it. It should, you would think that it would be the other way around, that it would be competitors clamoring for this, and I'm sure it's been kicked around.
I'm clamoring for it.
We've talked about it, right? We've talked about this over the years, and sometimes there's an element of needing technology or even the cost of the technology to reach a point where everything comes together at the same time, where you can get the right cameras, where it's cost effective to do it, where the video review process can be fast enough to be effective.
Oh yeah, because you couldn't do this with VHS.
Right. Yeah, like how it. I mean, I'm sure you could, but right, it wouldn't be cost effective, and so it seems like, based on what USDA is doing, that maybe now is that time where everything comes together.
I hope so. Now, we have been doing this at IFCS World Cup events, at least since 2010. I think I judged that year, and we had a video review. Nothing as good as what we just did at Cynosport. But there, we had official cameras. I think maybe 2 was all we had. And there, we didn't actually have a video judge. We only had a head judge. And I think they're still doing it this way at IFCS. And the way that works is every country gets a certain number of times that they can dispute a call. And at that point, the thing that they are disputing is then reviewed from the official video record.
That is wild.
So it's like, I think every country gets exactly three disputes.
That's funny because I was actually going to joke that as a fundraiser, we could open up disputing to for like a $5 fee. People who are watching on the live stream can press a button, kind of like reality TV style, vote them off the island.
Yes.
We could make a ton of money to send our teams overseas for the world event.
Yes.
I've solved the problem.
There you go.
Well, now this has been a great discussion about all of this stuff, but we just kind of came right into it. Usually I like to talk a little bit about our guest, and here we have you, a judge. We were chatting just a few minutes before we actually started the podcast, and I didn't realize that you'd been around the sport of agility here in the United States for so long. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, especially with respect to judging, how long you've been a judge, what organizations you've been judging in, and what big competitions you've been judging recently, aside from this one?
Let's see. I became a judge really just by a sort of accident. I had gone to a combination handling judging clinic with several of my club members, I think back in 1990, and they weren't getting enough people to participate in the judging clinic, so they were sort of begging everybody to do it. And my club members said, we definitely need somebody to judge. We've all voted, Janet, you're the one, you're the best one. You should go to the judging clinic. And I was like, but my dogs are here. I'm here for the handling clinic. You have to at least take really good notes for me, Terry Herman. And to this, and I never did get those notes. But I did become a judge. And so then I guess I've been judging, 3 or 4 years for USDAA. And at that point, AKC began exploring the sport. And I participated in a couple of the original advisory committees. And they pretty much grandfathered in judges from the 2 agility organizations that we had in this country at that time, which of course was USDAA and the National Committee for Dog Agility, NCDA, which I also was a judge of at the time. So those are pretty much the only 2 organizations I've focused on. I've seen, lots of others come and even a couple of them go in the United States, but I've pretty much hung my hat with those 2 organizations.
Well, now that I've got you here, I want to pick your brain on a couple of other judging-related topics. So from your perspective as a judge, what do you think of the handling, kind of evolution in handling over the last few years? And you've got a much longer span of time to look at, the 20, 25 years. Like, where do you think handling is going? What does it look like? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Is it changing more rapidly, or it's always been this rapid change?
Oh, handling has definitely changed, no mistake. I do see some things that used to be handled a certain way that stopped being handled a certain way, and then occasionally some of those ways are coming back. The focus, I think, in the last 4 years domestically and probably longer internationally has been to adopt an extremely close-handled handling style where the handler is generally not more than a few feet away from the dog. And so, if you're going to go to a lot of handling clinics, you'll see that type of handling being promoted. But when I say that the handler is close to the dog, I mean they're very close to the dog for the actual cueing of a particular obstacle. One thing that's definitely improved a lot is handlers trusting their dog's commitment to the obstacles more than we used to see. So a handler might come in very close to cue an obstacle, but as soon as they perceive that the dog is committed to an obstacle, the handler then goes and gets what I call gains ground on the dog to get to the next important handling position. So there's been a clear improvement in that ability over the last several years. And one thing that I have seen that we began to lose in this country as a result of a specialization in that type of handling technique is a lot of the distance handling skills that we used to see many people truly excel in. And, in fact, I think that you have to have both things in your handling tool set. You shouldn't overly focus on that close-in handling style. You probably want to spend a lot of time picking up those skills, but really don't neglect the distance handling.
I agree 100%. I think that's going to be kind of the new wave, and as you mentioned, it's really the old wave just coming back.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, and then you're going to have a generation of handlers that, regardless of age, gender, athleticism, they're going to have a lot of both skills. They're going to be able to handle their dogs closely. They're going to be able to send them and discriminate from a distance when they need to, when clever judges like yourself are trapping them on one side or the other of a dog walk. You know, I think that is kind of the next wave. And you saw, I think, this year at the FCI World Championship how useful some of those skills could have been and how people really, really struggled, the ones that needed to be there right beside their dog the entire course.
Yes, and, you know, there were a couple of segments on courses there where if you had a long-distance in to a backside of a jump, the rest of the course was easy for you. But if you had to get in close to handle that backside, you struggled on the next 6 to 7 obstacles. And so that would be an example of something that I suspect we'll start to see being emphasized as a skill that people will decide is an indispensable part of your tool set.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the sport changing and evolving and getting a little more skilled on the elite competitor side, how difficult has it been as a judge to decide kind of novice and open level challenges? Are those much tougher than they were 10 years ago, or do you feel like that's been kind of constant and just the excellent courses are getting tougher?
Well, many years ago, I had asked a friend of mine who was going to England back when they ruled the agility world. I really want you to get me some video of some British trials because I really want to see some of that excellent handling, and I want to see some of the course design and this, that, and the other. And so she brought me back a nice representative set of classes. But I sat down to look at their starters level course. And I was like all prepared to be extremely awed about, these people have been doing agility longer than anybody else, 20 years longer than we have. Their starters classes are going to be really incredible because they're going to have great teachers there, this, that, and the other. And I looked at it and thought, oh my gosh, a starters class looks the same everywhere in the world. Because everybody...
That's a great perspective.
Everybody starts at square one, So as a judge, it's really important to remember that if you're sitting down to design a starters or a novice course, everybody starts at square one. And it doesn't matter that the teaching's a little bit better than it used to be. They're starters. So I would like to think that really my starters and novice courses haven't changed much over the years, because it really is at that level shouldn't be a whole lot more than establishing that dog and handler can competently do the equipment in some reasonable amount of time. That's all you really should be testing, and some extremely elementary handling skills. Save all of the course challenges for the next levels where they've got some experience and now you can start to challenge them.
That's a great perspective and great advice for judges, because we do want to encourage these new competitors to come into the sport and to stay in the sport. So, giving them that. And it's a unique perspective to hear you say that about overseas starters, because I think one thing that everybody forgets is that the slice of agility that you see online, while it is amazing and while we have learned and grown so much as a sport because of the internet and things like that, it is just a slice, and it's going to be the better slice
exactly.
of the entire whole, because
absolutely.
People are not going to put their struggling beginning runs up. So, it's I think a lot of people feel that that in a lot of ways that the U.S. can be behind other places in the agility skills. And I think we have to remember that we see the full spectrum every weekend, and then we only see the best of the best from other countries when we get everything from the internet.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really great point. All right. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk with you about is I've always come at agility for years and years and years from the competitor standpoint. Diehard competitor, how do I get the best out of my dog? And I've never really thought about the organizational judging aspect of agility, but having had this podcast and met a lot of different people and been more involved with that, I think that's really an important part of the agility ecosystem. And so now I'm I feel like I'm kind of more aware of everything. And I think it's helpful for competitors who get out there and show every weekend to also kind of have a larger perspective. So give us the perspective on judging. What do you think is going on with judges? Are we not getting enough judges? Do we need to recruit more judges? Is judging is it evolving? Is it, how is it changing? What is that insider judging perspective that you can give us?
We definitely do need more judges. Both USDAA and AKC have been around for quite some time now. We are starting to see judges retiring for old age now. And so it's important that we bring new, fresh blood in. So that's something I suspect the advisory committees of both organizations are noticing and trying to make sure that we have a constant stream of new people coming in. That's true not only of judges, but as of exhibitors. We have to make sure we have new, younger people coming in. So as to the actual, judging psychology, if you will, I'm not very happy when I see somebody who's coming in and they want to be a judge because it's judge with a capital J. They're doing it because they perceive that it's some very respected position. I'm more interested with people that just really love the sport and really want to experience all of the different aspects that it's possible to, all the different viewpoints that it's possible to have in the sport. And those people who are really doing it more from I want to give back, or I just want to explore this new side of it, I think they're generally going to make your better judges. And I'm a little more impressed with their motivation for becoming a judge.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want to let competitors know that if you're interested in Janet's courses, she actually has over 500 courses of hers on agility course maps. Now, this is a site that we started, Esteban and I, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, before Bad Dog Agility. Before it existed, there was agility course maps, and this is a site where competitors can upload course maps. And what happened was a couple of judges who were really into kind of open knowledge, sort of, open book test style of judging. Like, here's everything I've done. If you can show up to my course and do it, you deserve a Q. I'm not hiding anything here. And Janet was one of those judges. She uploads all of her own courses to our course map site. It's not even by the competitors. So I'm sure that there are more Janet Gauntt courses on agility course maps than any other judge.
Which is actually kind of embarrassing.
Over 500.
Yes.
No, well, then I should take this opportunity to thank you now publicly on the podcast, because over the past 3 or 4 years, especially when I've had Gitchy these last 3 years getting ready for these big international events, we've done a ton of your courses. We've created several exercises and sequences that we've used, that we've shared with other people, and that we've worked with on weekends, all derived from your courses. And we're not saying every judge needs to go out and make their stuff public. We understand that there are very good reasons for judges not to do that. So, I don't mean to be critical in that way, but we're very appreciative of the judges who do put their stuff out. It's a really great thing, I think, for the sport. And, this is my chance to say thank you for helping us get better.
All right, you're welcome.
Learn and grow in the sport.
You are very welcome.
And thank you for joining our podcast today.
All right, it was nice to talk to you.
Well, we hope this gives everybody a little bit more insight into that whole instant review process that was used in Cynosport, give it a little bit more exposure. We will have a link to the article that you mentioned that was on the USDA website. That's where I first read about it. But I hope people all over the world find the process interesting and how it's playing out and how it's developing interesting. And that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Elite Science and Back on Track, and also NTI Global. Visit shop.ntiglobal.com for the widest selection of dog agility tunnels for both competition and backyard training. Known for free shipping, more options, high-quality products, and low prices, NTI Global has got you covered. They also offer tamer and anchor weight bags, along with a full line of accessories and agility storage solutions. Need your agility gear in a hurry? Don't forget to check the in-stock selection. Visit shop.ntiglobal.com and use promo code NTIAgility5 for 5% off savings today. Happy training!